It's really hard for me to believe the saying, if you love what you do, you'll never have to work a day in your life. A lot of people can fall into this different trap where their passions and their career are different things. This is exactly what me and Blake Cheek sit down to discuss. Join us as we talk about what drives his passion for technology, a little bit into his journey, and the pro tips he has learned along the way to where he is now. Let's go. Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Power Talks. My name is Griffin, the host of the Citizen Developer channel, and today I'm joined by super special guest Blake Cheek. Blake, thank you so much for being here, man. I'm really excited for the conversation, and in particular, you mentioned that a pivotal mistake you made, maybe early on, was straying too far from the technology and the things that you're passionate about. And we could probably spend the whole next hour talking about this. Like, what
Yeah.
advice do you have for those who are currently feeling like their passions are disconnected from their careers?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. To give you some context, I was in the technology field for most of my career. I actually started doing, networking and sysadmin stuff early on. I thought I was going to be a hardware guy. Way early in my career, I was like, you know what? Network, switches, routers, this is great stuff. I want to be a part of it. I was doing even Exchange Server, IIS, like all the on-prem stuff that people sort of know and look either fondly or not fondly upon. I got into cellular for more than a decade after that, which I loved. I was again very much part of the technology group within my respective company. And I always got to stay really close to a lot of the bleeding edge technology. I got to test pre-release devices, stuff like that. That makes your job pretty exciting. I left there and kind of went a little too far outside of tech for me. I could have. There was a technical component to my job, but that's not what I was doing. I was doing exclusively business development, and so it wasn't fun for me to be having these conversations, but not really being able to dive deep into the technology. And it didn't take long for me to realize, I want to be around the tech. Like I want to be immersed by it. And so I actually went to a tech distributor after that, because these distributors have access to all these things. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just knew I wanted to be around technology, and distributors have lots of vendor line cards. So it's like, all right, I'll start in this. If I don't like this, I can go to HP or I can go to Cisco. I can go to any of these different things. So I felt like the world would be my oyster and I would have a lot more opportunity. Um, and I felt like I became a lot more. Uh, I felt reinvigorated, right? And I felt like I started to find my passion, especially, I kind of randomly got thrown into the world of low code development. They just needed someone to help out, and it requires a very special and interesting type of individual to want to do this stuff. I'm sure you know. So, in terms of what I would say to someone who's feeling disconnected, it's a lot of career advice I got from a lot of really great business mentors along the way who talked about finding your passion and talked about, well, if you could go to work every day and it didn't feel like work, what would you be doing? And when you're younger, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, if I could just do anything, I would be independently wealthy or a travel blogger, like an Anthony Bourdain, type person. But we have to think in terms of reality, right? So, for people who are feeling really disconnected, I think my big career switch from Verizon, and then just a few years or something in between that and getting into Dynamics was you got to find that thing. And I did it in my mid to late 30s. It's never too late to change, right? You have to do that soul searching for yourself and think about what you do truly love, what you like being around every day. And if there's a way to make that a career, I think that that's fantastic. But you have to really think about that, and you have to remember that if you're not satisfied with what you're doing, it's never too late. It's never too late to change. You may have to sharpen the skills. You may have to go back to school. You may have to get additional certifications. But if you really want it, you got to put in the work.
Yeah. I'm still looking for the job where I can make $1 million a year by sipping pina coladas on the beach. I'm still
Uh,
still haven't found it yet. That's my
we all
passion.
are,
But
but we can't all be influencers.
yeah, right. But no, I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, though, in that like you can find something that you enjoy doing, even though it is work. At the end of the day, like don't get it twisted. I love what I do for work and contributing to
Me
the
too.
community and recording these conversations. But also, it is work. I enjoy my PTO. At the same time. Like so, there's
Absolutely.
there's that balance for sure. How do you mentioned that it takes a very special individual to enjoy working in this industry, and I think one of those special characteristics is you got to really love tech, but you also got to be a people person sometimes at the end of the day. Like what does like how have the how has prioritizing relationships with people and the difference that people make, like why does that play such a pivotal role in one's career within the Power Platform, within Dynamics, within tech consulting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To sort of back it up, my first jobs, the jobs I did going through high school and going through college, were actually food service, and I did the kitchen work for a while, right? But you got off work every day. You smelled like food. You always got out late. You're closing down the kitchen, and I got to watch the servers, right? And they'd walk out 2 hours ahead of me counting their money, not smelling like fry grease. And there was appeal in that. And so I eventually switched from serving and from serving into bartending. And you have to have these skills to interface with people when you do that. And so when I was in college and learning about tech, I had professors over and over again. They'll tell you, hey, look, you have the technical chops, maintain the people skills. It's going to take you a lot farther than people who only have the technical chops, because a lot of people will rest on their laurels in that space. And, there are a lot of people who want to code and they only want to be coders and they don't want to interface with the general public. And that's okay. If you do that, you're probably going to be relegated to just being a coder, right? If that's, we talked about finding your passion. If that's what you want, there's plenty of opportunity for you in that space. But if you want to truly talk about the product, if you want to be able to evangelize the solution, whether it's Power Platform or Dynamics or whatever, you do have to have those people skills. You have to be able to get out and talk about the product, because a lot of the people you're going to be talking to about this stuff aren't coders. It's not coders talking to coders. It's people talking to people. It's people like us who know enough to be dangerous, talking to people who don't have any clue what the product is. You have to back it up all the way to, well, this is Power Platform, and here's what it does. You can't start on third base. You have to start very early in the conversation. And so I just think it is important, if you don't have those things, but just like we talked about sort of in the green room before this, you gotta put in the at bats, right? You have to put yourself out here and you have to get outside your comfort zone if you want to develop those people skills.
Yeah. I can remember one example where I was on a project, and we were customizing dynamics for this organization, and the we call them product owners, right? Or like the main decision makers, the people that we're working with on the client side that kind of tell
Sure.
us what their business needs. They they were great, but they were as non-technical as you could possibly get. Like I still don't think they understand what table relationships are and how like in Dataverse, like it's not just a hyperlink to a different screen. Like no, this is a lookup field to a different record in the system, and like just like some of those little nuances, a lot of times like you have to navigate those conversations. Like that's almost more of the responsibility of the job sometimes, at least being, maybe a functional consultant or an architect, where you have to do that dance. Because you are right. There are definitely people out there that, are all they want to do is just sit behind their screen and code and build and not talk to anybody. And like that, dude, if that's you, like, go
Yeah,
on ahead. Like that's awesome that you
please.
found it, but a lot of times too, if you want to really continue to push your career, it often takes those next steps, which become less about managing tech and more about managing people, right? In pretty much any industry, right? And so
Yeah.
it's kind of just that natural progression. I totally agree with what you have to say. What are like, and yeah, you're right. Like what we were talking about is I've always been a pretty outgoing person, but it's one thing to be outgoing and another thing to like really have good communication skills. And so that is, I guess behind the scenes, one of the main drivers for like why I have these conversations, right? Is it pushes me to be uncomfortable, especially working from home. Like you don't get these sort of
Oh,
conversations when you
yeah.
work from home. You're not at the office, you're not, at the coffee pot or whatever, or grabbing lunch and you're doing these things. So it's like you kind of have to manufacture it sometimes, especially in today's world. What are
Yeah,
like
it's like living on an island working from home, It really
It
is.
is. It really is. How did you get these at bats? Like you mentioned that you had to really hone and sharpen and learn these skills. Like, what's some practical advice for how you got these this practice in these at bats in on developing your skills?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I think for me, some of it comes from the natural curiosity of wanting to know more about these technologies. I'm a technologist by nature, right? So I love this stuff. I love recording podcasts. Like you know, like even now, I'm like, I think I see like a keyboard behind you. Like you have headphones. You're probably using that. Like straight into a mic, and so I'm like, oh, what mic is he using? How's he recording? What cat? I
Here,
naturally
I got you. It's up here. It's
nice.
up here. Go ahead.
I I naturally gravitate to a lot of that stuff, but the other thing I'm gonna say may surprise you, but I love some YouTube, right? And as a gamer, as sort of as a hobby, I love streaming platforms like Twitch, or I see people are on this one called Kick. I can't keep up, man. They're on like
Yeah,
TikTok, they're on Kick, they're on YouTube. I don't know what platform they're using anymore, but I do like watching that type of stuff. And so you see really quickly, what do you like in a content creator? What do you like as a host? Like what's their personality? What are the types of things they say? How do they engage with their audience? And so, I started out just doing some recordings. I think I was in pre-sales. I was doing technical pre-sales at the time. And I feel like the best way for at bats for someone like that anyway, record some demos, And I think that my early stuff was okay, and you get better over time, but there's value in that content creation too, right? Because at the end of the day, everyone wants this unique or tailored sort of demo, but the secret for a lot of pre-sales people is a lot of your demos are pretty close to the same. It's you're showing the same car, you might put a different coat of paint on it. But you have to get out there, you have to do things like this, and maybe it's not podcasting or content recording, maybe it's something else, but you have to find something, and you have to try it, and you can't be afraid to fail.
totally. Maybe a switch up in a question. What initially captured your interest about Dynamics and the Power Platform? I think that's the time you had mentioned was maybe back around 2020. Like what
Yeah.
and getting to know you, like what captured your interest back then? I mean, obviously the world was crazy, but what's the beginning of that journey look like for you?
For me, it it was challenging, right? And I'm not trying to put down any of the other Microsoft clouds, right? There's challenges in everything. If someone said, Azure Kubernetes to me, my eyes are gonna go cross, you know. But so there's challenge across all the clouds, but this felt so different and departed from things I had worked on in the past. Like I said, I've used Office products my whole life, right? So I understand Word and Excel and yada yada. And Azure as sort of a hosted infrastructure service, I've dealt with virtual private servers in the past before there was Azure, so I know a little bit about private cloud hosting. And I understand that, by and large, Azure can just be a replacement for your on-prem infrastructure. So I got that stuff, but Dynamics and Power Platform were just a totally different beast for me. And as someone who likes a challenge, I'm not afraid to, I guess, confess to everyone who watches this. I failed all of my coding courses my first time through in college. Every one of them. Um, Whether that was SQL or .NET or C++, uh, I didn't get it. And I took them all a second time and I got A's in all of them the second time. It just took me a little bit longer, I think, than maybe the average person to latch on. But I mean, hey, what better way to challenge yourself than to take a past failure and get back on the horse, try it again. And the other thing is, I like to gravitate towards stuff that I think sometimes people are afraid of. And so people don't want to touch this stuff. It is weird. It's outside of the comfort zone. Or for a lot of people, it can even be boring. Griffin, there's nothing exciting about an ERP, no matter which way you
No.
slice it. You know, there's not. But the people who love it and the people who are passionate about it, the accountants, the people in manufacturing, it's integral to their day to day. So uh, I just like to be involved in something that's a challenge, something that other people don't want to do. I'm sure you've had this in your life. You've watched people ask for a volunteer, and you look around, you don't see anyone's volunteering to do it, and you're like, well, it's 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 my job. I'm going to step up to the plate. And so that's what I did, and that's kind of how I fell into this, because when I started in the Microsoft cloud space, I had the opportunity to sort of pick and choose what I wanted to do. But and at first I was sort of gravitated towards Azure, but then they need some help on the Dynamics and Power Platform side, and I was like, this is really cool stuff, and I never looked back.
If you are liking the conversation, be sure to let me know by liking the video and commenting down below what it is specifically you are getting out of it. And if you are interested in learning more about the Microsoft Power Platform, you're going to want to click on the first link down in the description down below to get access to a beginner's Power Platform guide led by me. This is a completely free, self-paced course that has hand-picked knowledge, everything that you need to know to be able to go and get your first Microsoft certification as soon as possible. The reality is not a lot of people can say they love what they do, and I feel very blessed to be able to say that I enjoy what I do for work as a Microsoft consultant. And if you want to start that journey alongside me today, be sure to follow and click on the first link down in the description down below. Now let's get back to the conversation. That is like maybe one of the main themes of that I hope is of these conversations in this channel. It's like people that, I try to title these in a way so they're not focused on the Power Platform and Dynamics, in hopes that somebody who's just like scrolling on YouTube or whatever wants to maybe a switch up and has this idea of working from home or whatever. Because I feel like it can be really intimidating. Just when I tell people I'm a software consultant, it's like makes it sound like I'm way smarter than I am, right? That I work
Yeah.
at Google or something, and I'm like, no, I don't do that. So it's just I totally agree that it can definitely be intimidating, but man, there's something so unique about Dynamics in the Power Platform that also makes it so approachable at the same time, So like I don't know if it's the community or the product itself or what, but I totally agree. I think that like to people who are considering, maybe a switch up or, are in your shoes, what, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
10 years ago, like, hey, what do I want to do? I don't want to be a bartender, but I have these people skills, like, what do I want to do? I've always loved tech. Like there could very well be a space for people like that, or for people thinking those things in this space. That's what I'm meaning to say. So, um,
Yeah.
what kind
There's
of, go ahead. Yeah, I
oh
was going to say, what kind
there's
of
a
thoughts do you
there's
have?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge community around this, and I enjoy meeting almost everyone that I meet. Whether I'm going to these events or coming online and chatting with folks like you. I feel like we all have different but unique stories, and we all sort of found this through our own strange and interesting ways. And so it's fun to get a chance to talk to these people because everyone you meet in the space is wildly passionate. I would I'll stand on business and say I don't think you survive in this space if you are not passionate about the work you do, because this is a really easy sector to get burned out in.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially with this is another thing we talk about on the show all the time is like staying up to date on the stuff, man. Especially with all the don't want to get into AI, but especially with all the AI stuff that Microsoft is like backing and bringing into the product, like they're literally every month it is like an absolute fire hose of stuff. Just even trying to keep up with product changes, new products, new features, new whatever. And so it definitely it is not a learn once and now you have a career. And so it
No, it's
definitely it
definitely
definitely
not.
can feel like a lot for sure. What's your I have this question as well. Maybe a switch up. Sorry for the poor transition. It says,
Oh, no
"What's your?"
worries.
It says, "What's your process when you realize that you don't necessarily have the answer to something and you need to learn more?" I guess it is a transition or a good transition, but like there's definitely times where we don't know stuff, right? It's like,
Oh, all
okay,
the
I
time,
don't know
yeah.
how we figure this stuff out or whatever. I can remember myself, I was working on a Copilot Studio project like when Copilot Studio first came out, and there was like no documentation. MVPs hadn't gotten their hands on it yet to make all their YouTube videos and blog posts. It was like, okay, we just got to bang our heads against the wall and figure this thing out, right? So
Yeah.
what's kind of your process when you realize that you don't have the answer to something and need to learn more?
I think that we all rely on the collective genius of the internet for better or worse. It's a huge part of it. Um, like you said, if there's already content that's been created, there's almost nothing you can't learn through YouTube a little bit. I know I've done it to work on car stuff in the past. You're like, hey, wait, how do I get to this part, or where is this thing? How what is it going to take to replace it? So you do that, but the other part is, again, going back to some of the great business mentorship I've had throughout my career, and one of those things was you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so I really stand by that. And I feel very fortunate in where I work now. I kind of made the joke when I was getting hired. I asked my boss, I said, I think I might be the dumbest person in the room. And he's like, no, I don't think you're the dumbest person in the room. But it is great to be surrounded by people who are more knowledgeable than you and have more experience than you. Um, and that's the way you learn, right? You have to learn by seeing and doing. You have to absorb that stuff. But um, check the internet, check the documentation if it exists, and then go start asking people. The tech is not tech is not full of unique unicorn problems, right? I think that almost anything in tech has been a problem for someone else before. There's only a limited subset of things that can go wrong within a technical problem. And so that's the other thing to sort of keep in mind, right? Like, even if we take it back to something super remedial, like, okay, my computer's not turning on. Great. Well, there's only a handful of reasons, right? There's not some technical gremlin that no one's ever seen or encountered before. So you just have to start the process of elimination, and you have to understand that it's it's a challenge that can be overcome. Whatever it
Yeah.
is, you have to acknowledge that.
Yeah. And I don't want to I don't want to take anything away from the experts that are out
Yeah.
there. But I find more and more people are flying by the seat of their pants. Like we are just all rowing the boat together and figuring it out. And they, like I said, there's definitely experts out there, but
Hmm.
a lot of times if you ask an expert, they're like, I just am a great Googler. I'm just able to
Oh yeah.
find stuff or talk to people and figure things out. And I mean, that's the really cool thing about having experience as well is once once you kind of learn how to solve a problem, maybe it takes a couple of times, but generally you're like, okay, now I know how to tackle this problem. It's one less thing you have to Google in the future, right? And so you can
Yeah.
kind of build up this I guess toolbox of bug resolution skills.
Yeah.
Does
True.
that make
True.
sense what I'm saying? But with new tech and things always changing, there's always constantly new problems as well. I think that's like something that's super unique about software is it almost becomes like, I don't know, where you get to a certain stage of the project where you're building this app, it almost becomes less build and more just like bug solving. Like that's what it's like. Why it's not even so much let's build new stuff. It's like, okay, let's fix this minor thing or fix this thing, or they're getting this sort of error, or whatever. And it takes a certain, I don't know, it takes a special kind of person, I guess, to be like, yeah, let's go and figure this out. I have no idea why this thing is happening, but we're gonna go and figure it out. And I feel like, the saying, you don't really know something till you can teach somebody that
Yeah.
thing,
I
like
agree.
I think it's the same way in, if you are really good at, we'll just say, bug solving or problem solving, like that's how I feel like you can be confident that you really know the product, because you need to know like how to, reverse engineer things. Not just like, okay, I click this button, then this button, then this button to build it, but like, okay, why could this be happening, and reverse engineer it, or figure out, ooh, I can see this sort of, I think about even like in the Power Apps Maker portal, like even just the nuances of like, oh, I can see this property on a field from this screen, but I can't see it from this screen. So I need to, let me go check this and then check that and then whatever. Just because I've, spent enough time in there building Dataverse tables and model driven apps and whatever. And so it allows you to, I feel like, yeah, if you want to microwave your ability to learn the Power Platform and dynamics, like be in the business of resolving bugs. Like that will teach you so much faster than just building stuff. What's
Yeah, you're right. It reminds you of like break fix type challenges where someone brings you something broken and they know what's broken, but it's up to you to try and deduce, and it does change your mindset. I think that a lot of us technical folks always jump to the most technically challenging reason that something can be broken or have a bug. But if you don't start at the square one, you might be missing the most obvious thing. And I find that to be true for a lot of technical challenges. There's a reason, although people like us probably get super annoyed when we have to call a help desk. And they're like, have you tried turning it off and back on again? There's a reason that is the first question. There's a good reason that's the first question, because it's
yeah,
probably not, some sort of file corruption thing. It's probably just needs a reboot. Uh,
yeah.
you know.
That's so funny you say that. So I was on a project recently as well for a pretty large organization, and I guess part of their IT team wasn't even aware of this project we were doing. And so like the week of go live, somebody in this group who wasn't even aware of the project heard that we were deploying stuff to their production, and it was like, whoa, 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 like what's going on? You're not getting past me.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Did you guys test what you built? It was like the questions that they had. It was like, yes, we tested it. Yes, like
Yeah.
we did all this stuff. So I don't know. It's funny. I think about too. Oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. But oh well. I think about man, I gotta remember what I was just gonna say.
Oh, no worries. You're talking about testing. You're talking
Yeah.
about probably obviously being shadow IT or threatening the IT person at a company who's like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
that.
Yes, I remember. I remember now. So I find too that what'll happen is, I try to spend like 10, 15 minutes just figuring it out on myself, by myself, trying to figure out what's going on. Look at this, look at that, look at this, whatever. And then if I can't, then I'm like, okay, let me message, somebody else on my project, or, somebody quick, and see what's going on. And I find that the amount of times I write out what the problem I'm experiencing is, I like hit send and then it like instantly hits me after I get that. I'm like, this is the issue. All right, let me delete my message. Sorry about that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. And then I can go and fix it. And so I got a pro tip of, yeah, if you are like feeling like you can't figure something out and you don't know what to do, like just like speaking the problem out loud can be really helpful, because a lot of times what you're saying, yeah, like you have these assumptions. Like when you're resolving a bug, it's basically just fixing, like figuring out which assumption is wrong. That's like what
Hmm.
you're doing, right? And so it's,
Yeah.
there's assumptions that you're making that you're maybe not considering or thinking about that are what's causing. I guess I can't think of a good example, I guess, but like saying it out loud, at least to me, really helps me like call out those assumptions that I'm making. You know what I mean? Then
You
I kind
know,
of like, oh wait, I haven't tested that. I haven't tested that assumption. Go ahead.
you know what my pro tip would be? Walk away. I think that we tend to really, sometimes if you're really focused on a problem, you tunnel vision, right? You can't think about any of the other options. You were chasing a rabbit down a hole, right? And it's important sometimes to walk away, do something else for a while and come back. Wait until your brain naturally resets, right? Because ramming your head against a brick wall over and over again isn't gonna, as much as that's my MO, I'm very guilty of it, but it's not gonna help you solve the problem any easier or faster. Hey, this is frustrating me. You know what? Go take a walk, go take lunch, go answer some emails, do something else. Wait for your brain to kind of reset and then come back and look at the problem with fresh eyes.
Yeah, completely. I wanted to ask you, I mean, we're talking about kind of some more being in the weeds and building.
Yeah.
How you're a director of cloud solutions. I mean,
Hmm.
oftentimes directors aren't able to, I feel like, able to be as hands-on as maybe they want to be, or as a role like myself, where I tell my friends I'm kind of just like the worker bee. I'm a builder. I crush out my tasks. I'm building these different things. I'm definitely in the conversations with the client, but how it sounds like you're able to stay pretty close to the tech, and maybe you're just speaking from experience. What's it like being a director and having the opportunity to remain close to the tech, close to solutions and things?
Yeah, so it goes back to one of the original questions, which was finding your passion, right? And I knew that I didn't want to be too far removed from the tech. Like I said, I've done sales where I was so far removed from the tech, and I didn't particularly care for that. So I'm glad to be in a role where I get to stay close to the tech. I mean, for me, part of it is obviously I'm not, the company I work for is not nearly as massive as the company you work for, right? So there's part of it there. But the other part of it is our philosophy is everyone is a techno-functional consultant, which means everyone needs to be able to have conversations and everyone needs to be able to write code. But even if that wasn't the case, going back to the finding your passion part, uh, if you want to be close to it, you have to make that effort. And through Microsoft, there's lots of good ways to do that. I don't know about every other programming language or philosophy or platform out there, but within Microsoft, I got really involved in some of the weekly or monthly like developer calls. And you can get a Power Platform developer environment, just independent of your work, and so anyone can get a developer account and start playing around with this stuff as much as they want. And so sometimes, I go in there and I just see what kind of dumb or silly stuff I can make, or go in there to look at the changes. Like, gosh, I mean, last time I looked at the Power Platform Admin Center, even I was like, well, they've changed that since last time I looked at it.
Yes,
When they
yes.
changed the designer view, and that does present its whole new set of problems. Like you said, you may know how to do something, but where is it now that they've changed the interface on you? So
Yeah.
so you get into a little bit of that, and you have to be sharp. I feel like even though I'm doing a lot more partnerships and alliances and talking with the people about the tech, people can sniff out a phony. And so I think it's important to be sharp. I would almost compare it, and I was going to make the analogy earlier, but I'd almost compare it to like selling cars, right? And the different types of cars you might sell. If you go to like your Honda or Toyota dealership, it's probably not as important to know the ins and outs of the car. People are coming there because they either have a car they want in mind already, or they're kind of looking for more. Hey, I need like something economical and reliable is going to get me from A to B. But if you get into like higher end car brands, you have to know the ins and outs of the car. If you go sell a Porsche, they're going to ask you about the specs of that car. What's the 0 to 60? What's the horsepower? Like, show me all the different features. Hey, this thing has launch control. What's that look like? And so you can't not know your product there because you're speaking to a different type of clientele. And so I feel like it's definitely that way within business applications. You have to be able to show the tech, especially because these are platforms, right? It's when you're building a model driven app and you're having to explain to people, like, they're like, well, what does this look like? And your answer is, it can look like whatever you want it to look like. Well, within the context of what a model driven app can look like. But, if you were building a CRM and it says account, like, well, we don't call them accounts, we call them something else, and you have to be able to say, oh, well, that's great, that's simply renaming or adding a new table and calling it that. You have to be able to show the tech because you're talking about like starting from a blank slate. So it's not your Honda where it's like, yeah, here it is, it's ready to go, here's the keys, drive it off the lot, treat it good, it'll last forever. This is going to be very customized to you. What color do you want your Porsche? Do you want the Alcantara leather? Like, what's important to you? Do we need to do like the drilled slotted rotors, oversized, like whatever the case may be? It's going to be more specific to a person. And when you get into that, product knowledge is important. Just another quick analogy, obviously, because I saw an MSP say this one time before. We don't do shirts off the rack, right? We're like a tailor. And so business applications are very much like being a tailor. Like, you're not going in there and ordering small, medium, large. You're going in there and a consultant is taking the measurements through discovery or whatever and then building something custom to you.
Yeah. I I hear you, man. I agree because a lot of times, like, so we'll be. I'm reminded of when we operate in sprints, right? Like, say 2 to 4 weeks, and then at the end of the sprint, we'll typically demo to the business on the things that are built, so they can see what their dollars are going towards, and
Yeah.
the customizations. And a big piece of that is even like using real world example data, even, not
Oh
just
yeah.
like Griffin's funny test account. Like, don't name it that. Name it, the business that this person is going to be interacting with or whatever. And because I think it's easy for us because we're so around the tech and we're like, what, the name doesn't matter. What's that matter? Like, whatever. But to these people, especially like the end users and the decision makers, like, man, if really painting that picture, I think plays a huge role in their ability to actually understand, okay, where am I in the process? What are we talking about here? And really see that vision of their Porsche, so to speak, right? And that's something I guess I've been learning more and more, and the importance of that, because yeah, like at the end of the day, that's like, these are the people who are, like I said, the decision makers of this. And so you need to really be able to break it down, and they see right through the BS
They
completely,
do.
totally. So
Well, and to their credit, they're the ones driving the car every day, right? So it's the most important that it works and it fits for them. You're just kind of a transactional piece of the puzzle, right? Like, so you may like it one way, but however they like it, this is going to be the system they use for hopefully years to come. It's got to fit them right. So it's
yeah.
important to get that done.
And I will say, having somebody who is vocal and cares a lot and maybe feels like a rock in your shoe,
Yeah.
um, like, having that person is better than the opposite, because like I've been on projects where we had product owners and decision makers who were that way, and I've been on projects where it was the opposite, where they were like hands off, didn't mention anything, every single demo, oh, this looks great, and then we're like 2 weeks from go live, and they're like, hey, we're missing this fundamental piece, and it's like, well, this is what we showed you 6 months ago, and you said it looked great. You
Oh
closed the
yeah.
PBI. Like, what do you mean? You said this was good. So like, it's kind of like, you know, it stinks when you're like dealing with somebody like that, but also it's like, man, down the road it makes things so much smoother because they are checking you. They are making sure this is actually what they need. They are actually following along and like, okay, no, this would work for us being able to do our day jobs, right? Like
It's
it's
fine is the kiss of death. 100% to your point. Like, I need you to love it or hate it. Like, I want you to be super bipolar about this. Like, love what I showed you or detest it. But it's fine is going to translate into those types of results in the end product, right? People are going to say,
yeah.
it's fine. And it's fine to me means people aren't going to adopt it. And if people don't adopt it, then they start either questioning the quality of the work you did, or the organization you work for, or why did we spend, tens of thousands of dollars on this solution that's fine.
Yeah.
You have to get them off of the fence of fine, and is it good or is it bad?
Yeah. And the people who I feel like the people who say that also like I'm a lot of times like we were talking in the beginning of the conversation like we're talking to people who are, account executives and salespeople or customer service reps or what managers of customer service reps or whatever. They do not have experience developing software and
No.
typical application lifecycle management and all this stuff. So like it's fine. Kind of just means like that's good enough for now, but in 6 months I'm gonna want to say, hey, let's change it. Like, and it's like you can't change it in 6 months. It's like, but they might not necessarily understand that because they've never been through that before.
Yeah.
I I have one final, I guess, one kind of final question.
Sure.
What other pro tips or pieces of advice do you feel like you have gathered from your experience with hundreds of MSPs over your career and that have kind of changed your approach to solution development?
That's a good one. Griffin, I feel very fortunate, um, in that I have gotten to see business applications through sort of all all phases, right? I've get to understand it from the high level of the distributors who are selling the solutions, right? Understand the pain points of what they kind of have to deal with, and being completely transparent, like the struggles they have with their relationships with their vendors like Microsoft, right? Like, we have conflicting priorities, like they have financial goals they have to meet. They have Microsoft's goals they have to meet. So, they kind of have that angle working, but also the MSP angle and like all the things that they're trying to uh, provide to their clientele. And again, you sort of see the conflict there because, you know, they have a lot of vendors saying the same things that we say. Hey, work with our product. It'll help you sell more. It'll help make your clients stickier, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's great that I say that, but also saying that like any other vendor, I'm not going to like name names, but every other vendor, it has a very similar pitch. So to try and grab their actual mental real estate and get them to work with you, presents its own sets of challenges, and they obviously have their own apprehensions a lot of time about working with a partner. But before I came here, I also worked with other solutions integrators, just like my company, and so I've seen what works and what doesn't work from their perspective, and so I just feel like being able to see it from all perspectives provides a little bit of a unique view compared to perhaps someone who only knows it from the distribution side and doesn't understand the MSP or the systems integrator side, or someone who's just a MSP but doesn't understand, well, why is my distributor telling me this, or why is my this integrator wanting to come to me with a partnership, or hey, I work at an integrator, but I have no clue why this is important at the distributor level. So I think the more you understand about the conflicting priorities that everyone has, the more you can sort of navigate that minefield. Um, because everyone's being told something and being pulled in a million directions, and you have to be able to talk through that, and I'm always happy, Griffin, when I get a chance to be able to showcase that level of expertise with people. Like, hey, I understand, but you have to get people to see that, hey, I'm not just this guy who helps develop low code solutions. Like, i've I understand, I've walked a mile in your shoes, and I understand why you're being asked to do this and X, Y, and Z. It creates a much more sustainable partnership. But when you've had a lot of exposure like this, you get to see what works and what doesn't. And that's a really nice tool to have in your toolkit.
Totally. No, I that's awesome, man. We are about at time, so thank you for sharing all that. I
Oh,
want
of
to
course.
hop over to the after hours happy hours segment of the show. Um, I mean, you've only mentioned it a couple of times. Really passionate about tech and everything. You mentioned too, you've always been an avid gamer. I will say I'll start off in that growing up, I was huge into video games, kind of like the classics. I can remember when I feel like the first game I really played was on Xbox and was Skyrim. Yeah, are you a
Okay.
Skyrim guy or like an Oblivion or Elder Scrolls series person?
you
Was
know, you know, I
Go ahead.
I never got too far into those. I have a very few selection of games that I play these days, and I get really deeply into them. And I know people who've gotten into Skyrim and played, like you said, for countless hours. There's
Yeah.
a lot you can do, but I never really messed around with that franchise. I started out classic Nintendo stuff, right? And Super Nintendo and N64. And, that was my jam for a very, very long time. These days, I'm into, slightly more mature titles. I actually got Tony Hawk 3 and 4 for PlayStation 5 the other day. So I'm super amped to sort of relive, my life from like 20 years ago playing those. The soundtracks are always a banger.
Yeah.
But, I will say, and this would be my tie-in to Biz Apps. One of the games I have played for a long time, is something like World of Warcraft. It was a very prolific game for many
Sure.
years. And what that has to do with business applications is it's not a game you can just pick up and play. It's always evolving. There's always new research. There's always a new meta build. There's always a min maxing. There's always like research, like patch notes. This has changed, and you have to be able to keep up with that. So there's a game outside of the game. It's not Mario. You can't just pick it up and play it and figure it out. You have to like do your homework to be good at the game.
Yeah.
I've been playing a lot of gotten back on the Call of Duty horse
Oh yeah.
again. Like same thing. Like, hey, there are the best builds. You wanna have better accuracy. You got to do this.
Yeah.
And so that has a lot of tie-in to how we work with Power Platform, really, doesn't it? In the sense of like, you have to read the licensing guide. You have to read the release notes. If you don't play the game outside the game, you won't be good at what you do. You can't just, hey, I'm a low coder and never look at because you're going to get in there one day and be like, well, what do you mean they changed the designer? What do you mean they changed the studio? Like, what do you mean they changed the admin center? Uh,
Yeah.
you have to do your homework along with it. So I think that's kind of where it ties in. And as someone who's played these games for decades, I'm just used to that.
Yeah. I was always a big first person shooter as well. I can remember grinding like Black Ops 2 back in the day, and then
Yeah, a lot of people love
really,
that one.
oh yeah, and then really got into like the Modern Warfare 2019 back in, I
Yeah,
guess, in 2020 and or
that
2019
was
to
a banger
2020,
too.
and
Yeah,
the obviously all the Warzone and everything. I It's so
okay.
funny. Some of my best friends, like man, the amount of trios we ran back in those days. Who knows? Who knows how many wins we got or whatever. But man, the trio was was always together. So no, I completely agree. It's funny, I at no fault to my wife, but really have not. I got married a little over 2 years ago, and
Congrats.
I don't know, really ever since then, it's kind of just other priorities. So I haven't been the most avid gamer, but enjoy dabbling in like some Rocket League or played some Marvel Rivals with my friends
Okay.
recently. But that's about it. I'm about as casual of a gamer now as it gets. But I used to be, man, getting the skins and mastery camos and all that stuff back in
Yeah,
Call of
but you
Duty.
see
So
how it gears you, it conditions you for doing work like we do now. You have to,
oh yeah,
but and I'll tell you, Griffin, the person who can figure out how to bring that level of gamification to the workplace will have the most addictive company to work for.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Honest, like if I could get off this podcast and get like a little pop up on my screen that I've advanced in the battle pass for completing one podcast today. Oh, those dopamine hits. There's nothing like it.
That's so funny. Yeah, totally. Well, sweet man, we're at time. Thank you, Blake. Thank you, man, so much for this
Of
conversation.
course.
Connecting with people is always my favorite part. If
Me
people
too.
were listening to this and were impacted in some way, or were like, I need to get in touch with this Blake guy, what would be the best way for them to reach you?
Oh man. I am very active on LinkedIn. I love getting connection requests or messages through LinkedIn. That's one of the best ways. You can drop me an email, either bcheek at Incite Automation. It's another good way to get in touch with me. Or if you have Teams and want to find me on Teams and message me that way, I'm pretty platform agnostic. Just don't call me.
Cool. Yeah, no
Don't
worries.
call.
I'll
I'm
have.
busy. My day is spoken for. I don't have time for a phone call. I have time for your email.
That's right. Yeah, I'll be sure to have a link to your LinkedIn down in the description down below, and then
Perfect.
they can find your other contact info.
Thank you.
So, sweet man, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to you for sticking to the end of the video. My name is Griffin Lickfeld, the host of the Power Talks podcast and Citizen Developer channel, and I'm excited to connect with you in the next one.